Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 Podcast. I am your host, Nache from NacheSnow.com. Welcome. You can find the show notes for this page over at NacheSnow.com/133. Okay, so who do I have on this week? Some of you guys may know her. Her name is Jessie Katz Greenberg, and I'm really excited to share her story. Jessie worked as an entrepreneur for a couple of years, and then she worked as a package director for a while, and then she just asked herself not too long ago, which you'll hear in the story, kind of like what she wanted to do next, right? And as she was working as a packaging director, she was still doing independent work, like teaching workshops and such. And she wanted to continue on the 9-to-5 path versus going the entrepreneur path. And she landed as the DIY content director of Jumprope. So she talks us through how she thought through this process and why she decided to make this decision and why this decision was good for her. So it was really interesting hearing her story. We've connected online because we're part of like that crafting community. And so I just loved really being able to like dig into her story and have a story that kind of works in reverse, right? In her earlier years, she did entrepreneurship, and then she has decided to stay on the 9-to-5 train while still doing, a little something on the side. But that entrepreneurship full-time just isn't for her. I love this story. I've done people who successfully do side hustles. I've had people who do 9-to-5, then become an entrepreneur. I've done many different variations. So I want to continue to provide that for you guys, to let you guys know that you pivot whenever it makes sense, and there's no right or wrong, whichever direction you go. Full-time entrepreneur, full-time traditional career, or a hybrid of the two. All right? So if you love this episode, please head on over to Apple Podcast if you are an Apple person, and rate me 5 stars. I would really, really appreciate that. If you are listening on Spotify, Google Play, and whatever else, please, whatever their rating system is, if you could give me a thumbs up on YouTube or 5 stars somewhere else, it really helps people find the show. And of course, you guys know sharing is caring, my friends. If this is an episode that a good friend might need to hear, please share or share with your audiences. Every time you guys do that, it is greatly appreciated. And last but not least, remember when you head on over to NacheSnow.com in the menu, check out courses and journals. I've got a few things over there. Not only will you support the podcast, you will support yourself. All right, folks, let's get into this episode. Hello, Jessie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. I've just done a nice little intro on you, telling the people like how we've connected online and how now we've been in like clubhouse rooms and all that good stuff. So I'm really excited to have you on the podcast, and I was excited to be on your podcast too, the Craft Hangout.
Yeah, we loved having you on. And like I said when we were chatting earlier, I can't believe that I haven't connected with you about being on your podcast earlier. So I'm really excited we're able to do this.
This is perfect timing. But before we get into Craft Hangout, your new position at Jumprope, can you just tell the listeners just a little bit about you and your background? Who's Jessie?
Who's Jessie? All right. If we go back a few years and kind of look at my background and all the creative endeavors, so I went to art school for graphic design, and I worked as a graphic designer for 10 years. I took a little break in there to do freelance design and try the whole full-time entrepreneur thing out. I had two handmade businesses throughout this time, one selling jewelry and one selling stationery. So I've had the experience of doing the craft fair thing, the Etsy thing. And then I went freelance for a couple years to be able to work for myself and also concentrate more on my handmade stationery business. And a lot of lessons learned in that time. And what I learned is I actually enjoy the accountability and the organization and teamwork of a full-time job. So which to be honest, I feel like it was a hard lesson to learn as an artist
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like just this whole being an entrepreneur is so much part of this creative artist lifestyle that you think everyone is striving towards. So it
Mm-hmm.
honestly took me a few years to be okay with the fact that, no, I want to look for a full-time graphic design job again. So I became a packaging graphic designer for a textile company here in New York City and ultimately became the packaging director there. But it was my years there where I really started to explore what I wanted to do in the crafting community as well. Because I knew, like, even though I know I like the security and the teamwork of a full-time job at a company, I still wanted that crafting community. So I started teaching craft workshops, realized I loved sharing art with others, especially if they didn't think they could be creative. The person who comes to the class and says, like, I work in spreadsheets all day, my lettering piece is not going to look good. And then at the end of the class, their lettering piece looks awesome. They're my favorite students.
When?
Yeah, everyone, people, they're so nervous to get creative because the Instagram and social media puts a lot of pressure on people to like
That
create something kind
comparison
of
trap, because
perfect.
they're like, oh, my stuff isn't going to be as good. And it's like, well, stop comparing yourself to someone who's like lettering every day, right? Like, just do you. Like, all that matters is
Exactly.
if you like it.
Exactly. There are two types of people that come into a class like that. There's the person who comes in and immediately is, oh, my thing is not going to be good because I've never done it. Or there's the person that expects it's going to be perfect because they see the perfect version on Instagram all the time and then don't understand why at the end of a 2-hour class they don't have a perfect piece to post on Instagram. Those are the two extremes of students you get.
Yeah.
So I started teaching a lot here in New York and in New England, and that's where I ultimately ended up meeting Eliza, the creator and host of Craft Hangout. I met her actually. I was teaching a class at a place called Craft Jam, and she was taking a class in the room next to me, and we just happened to talk, and I ended up being a guest on Craft Hangout. I later joined as a co-host, and through Craft Hangout is how I met up with Jake, the CEO of Jumprope, and that's how I landed my current job, which is DIY content director at Jumprope. So I definitely didn't think that my like journey and my networking and crafting would land me at a tech startup, but that is what happened, and I'm loving it.
Okay, well, I want to go back and just have a conversation with you about a couple things before we get into your current situation. One is just a conversation about entrepreneurship, right? Because I
Mhm.
love what you said about how you realized you needed that accountability or structure or whatever that might have been. And I think people struggle with that because they see people online and they're like living their best life with these dream positions or, this dream company, and they get to work from home, and, they're on their own boss, which is great, right? But I feel like there are things that come with that where you have to be good with structure. You have to be good with doing your own marketing and doing your own, well, of course you can, I guess, have a team or whatever once, you start to make income, but there's a lot that you have to do that you wouldn't have to do if you were like in a 9 to 5. So I'm just kind of curious
Exactly.
your thoughts about that. If someone is like, well, I don't know, should I be an entrepreneur and work for myself, or should I have a 9 to 5, or if I should I do both? What are some of the things you think they should think about?
Yeah, so one of the things is like be really honest with yourself about the daily tasks you're going to have to do as an entrepreneur. Like you said, we always see people living their best life and they're posting all the good things and all the creative things. And I do think there is a shift in social media where people are sharing more behind the scenes and getting more real and sharing. Most of my days spent on spreadsheets or like accounting. Like they are sharing more of that, but make sure when you're evaluating if entrepreneurship is the right path for you, that you think about you're going to be spending time doing your quarterly taxes, because now that's a thing you have to think about. And even when you're working on a project and it's going great and it's thriving, you have to be thinking 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of the clients you're going to have after this project ends. And so there's just a lot of things that I, to be honest, didn't think about going into it, that were all those back end things that were going to be really taking time and energy away from the creative stuff that I wanted to do. And I'm glad I had that experience, because I don't think I would have been able to evaluate if entrepreneurship was for me and come to this decision had I not tried it for a while. And I did it for over a year. I had design clients. I also worked on my own stationery business. I really was diversifying the income there to make it work. But the other thing that I realized was, and I forget what podcast I was listening to, but I was listening to someone talk about, if you're going to work for yourself, really how much money you have to make. Because think of it like you're not getting health benefits from your job. You're having to do all of these extra tasks that you wouldn't have to be doing at a full-time job, like all of this back-end stuff. And you're probably spending more hours working than you would be if you worked at a full-time job. And someone said you have to be earning, I think it was, you had to at least be earning 6 figures to make it even worth your while, because you're paying your own health insurance and your taxes and all of that. And it was like, do I really see myself getting to that point with this business? Do I want to be at that point? Do I want to start hiring virtual assistants and things to take some of this off my plate? And it was like, that was just not exciting to me. So kind of shifting gears. And I did make a little bit of a shift, which was fun, going from, like, before I was an entrepreneur, I was doing graphic design, but for like herbal supplement companies. And so, you know, it was fine. I'm earthy crunchy. I can get into that. But after I really was more specific about what I wanted in a full-time job, and the packaging graphic designer job at this textile company in New York was a little bit more exciting at the time. And so I think as long as you can really find a full-time job that you find fulfilling, then it can kind of ease that transition of like, oh, I don't know if entrepreneurship is for me.
I agree. And it's interesting. I try to, on the podcast, make sure I have a good mix of both. I have people who start out maybe right out of college being an entrepreneur. I have people who go from being full-time to maybe quitting or getting laid off and then starting their own business, and then kind of a hybrid approach like me, where you're working full time, but then on your nights and weekends, you might be working on your business. But I think you are, which was intriguing to me when I saw your email, I think you are the first person, or maybe the second, I have to think about it, to go in reverse.
Oh, yeah. To do the entrepreneur thing and then be like, nope.
Like,
And I had it in the middle there. Like I had like a solid like 6 years of full-time graphic design work before I was like, let's try this. And then was like, nope.
Don't like it. But I love that, because it just shows you pivot when you need to pivot. I think sometimes people feel like once they make a decision, that's it. And that's not the case. Like, you have to figure out what makes sense for you in your season of life. So for you, even 10 years from now, you might be like, okay, that was great, but maybe now I want to work for myself. And that would be okay too. But you just have to do what's right for you and what you know you have the capacity to do, and do what you actually want to do, to something that brings you enjoyment.
Exactly. And you're totally right. It's just because I didn't like it several years ago when I was doing the entrepreneur thing. It does not mean that I've ruled it out forever. I definitely, it is something that I check in with myself every once in a while and say, like, is this something we want to work towards? I did have that check-in period about a year ago when I was looking for, or a little over a year ago now, when I was looking for another job before I started at Jumprope. And it was like, no, now is not the time. But I think, excuse me, I think that the other thing to remember too is if entrepreneurship is something on your list and maybe you're not there yet and you do still want the structure and stability of a full-time job, think about a job that's going to give you the skills and the experience that's going to help you become an entrepreneur. The jobs I was working previously were very much like I just came in, I filled a graphic designer role. I wasn't doing much outside of the graphic design aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't really learning like the business skills that would have probably helped prepare me for entrepreneurship more. Whereas now working at a startup, even though it would be years and years down the line, I assume if I ever decide to like think about working for myself again. But I do think if I worked at this startup 10 years ago and then a few years in decided I wanted to work for myself, I think I might have been better prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So if entrepreneurship is on your list, but you need a full-time job for now, look for those jobs that are going to help you build skills to work for yourself.
Yeah, and a book that I recommend, and I recently sent it out to the newsletter, is this book called Work Optional. And I really like this book because, and this is my second time reading it. I think I read it maybe 5 years ago, and then now I'm like rereading it again so then I can implement some more of the things in the book. But I only bring this book up because even though it is called Work Optional, and so it's all about retiring early, but even if that isn't your goal, I really, and I think the name of the lady who wrote it is like Tanja Hester. I'll have it in the show notes. But the reason why I like this book, because it's regardless if you're working a 9 to 5 and trying to retire early, or you start working for yourself, and then, like in this case with Jessie, you start to work for someone else. It's all about getting your money right and thinking about retirement regardless, and healthcare. And so even if you, I feel like, pivot along the way, as long as you're making the right decisions when it comes to like your finances and your health, at least you have some kind of safety net, you know?
Yes. Exactly. That's important for sure.
Okay, so wanted to get into that, but then also wanted to get into the podcast, Craft Hangout.
Yeah.
And building a community, because I feel like you were like, okay, I want to explore this craft community, and you know, you guys got together and you created this podcast. So how has that been, like, just building a craft community and really, I think, finding a group of people that inspire you and you can help inspire? Like, how has that impacted you and how are you able to do it?
Yeah, so it's been an awesome experience. I've been on Craft Hangout for a couple of years now, and really, like, the creation of Craft Hangout, the idea of Craft Hangout goes entirely to Eliza Capitan, our host. So Eliza is the host and creator, and then myself and Lulu Thatcher, our co-hosts. And it's so funny because now we're in, oh my God, why can't I remember if we're in season 3 or 4? We're in 4. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna say we're in 4. We joined late, so Eliza had already done 1 season of the podcast with 2 other hosts, and it just happened pretty serendipitously where she was already friends with Lee and had Lee guest host a couple episodes, and I happened to meet her at the workshop that I was teaching and guested on the podcast, and then joined as a guest host for a couple episodes rather in season 1. And then she brought me and Lee on in season 2. So the creation, getting it off the ground, really, Eliza kicked butt during that part for the first season. And then Lee and I got to come in when it was already like it was already rolling a little bit. So we got to just kind of join for the fun part. But it has been a lot of growth since then. We've had some incredible guests along the way that have allowed us to meet some pretty awesome goals that we had for the podcast, like, ranking #1 for crafts on Chartable and things like that. And I think when it comes to, which this obviously as a podcaster, and you're so great at this yourself, like, it's all about really telling a story and producing a story that your listeners are going to not just have fun hearing, but are going to learn from and have actionable items that they can take away. So that's something that we really focus on, is just creating these takeaways that at the end of the episode, people can feel inspired to make something or to plan their future business or entrepreneur endeavors, or they have something that they can take away from this. And connecting with our listeners has just been awesome. The fact that listeners are so ready to interact with us. We have a Facebook group that they interact with us in, and then on Instagram, obviously, and that they're so supportive of us as we are supportive of them, and we get to see their craft projects. They get to comment on our craft projects, and it really is a community. It's not just like we're putting out episodes and hoping someone hears them. So
right. And that's what I love about you guys, because it feels like it is a community. And the thing about it is, like, you're a host on the Craft Hangout, and at the time, I'm assuming before Jumprope, you still had the packaging position.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So how did Jumprope come about? Like, did they hear you like on the podcast, or did you see something on LinkedIn? How did you make that transition? Did you discover them, or did they discover you?
They found Craft Hangout. So yes, it was, and this is something like I was enjoying my packaging graphic design job at first, but then it started, I wasn't as fulfilled through it, and had started to talk to actually Eliza and Lee at Craft Hangout about how I was looking for something different and not really sure what that was, but I knew I wanted to do something more in the craft community. Like, that's why I was hustling, teaching workshops, like sometimes 3 or 4 nights a week after work, and went to Craftcation and just continually networking in the craft community, because I didn't know at the time exactly what I wanted, but I knew that if I just kept talking to the people who were into the stuff that I was into, that something would happen. And at the end of 2019, or nearing the end of 2019, we were talking about our goals for 2020 on the podcast, and I said that I wanted to create more craft videos. I think at the time I had only created 4 or 5, and most of them were just like time-lapse process videos. And I said that, and I think it was the same week. I don't think that Jumprope, Jake, our CEO at Jumprope, I don't think he heard me say that on the podcast. I think the timing was just funny how it happened. That same week, he reached out to Craft Hangout on Instagram just about connecting and learning more about the craft community. So we invited to have him on. It was the end of 2018. So, we were getting ready to break for the holidays. So we actually didn't schedule his interview. It wasn't going to be until February. And in that time, he was talking with Eliza about his interview and was like, we're also looking for someone to be like a craft content director at Jumprope. Do you know anybody? And I think it took her a half a second before she texted me and was like, the job you're looking for, I have the job. And so I connected with Jake. I made a couple of my own, like my first videos on the Jumprope app, connected with him, interviewed, got hired, and the timing just worked out where I think I was officially hired like 4 days before we interviewed him on Craft Hangout. So I hadn't started at Jumprope yet, but like 4 days after getting the offer, I was interviewing my new boss on Craft Hangout. So
no pressure.
Right? Looking back, it's so funny how it happened, because I cannot imagine working another job right now. Like, this is 100% where I'm supposed to be. And I'm just thankful that I was patient through all of that, like really hustling and experimenting in handmade businesses and teaching workshops and blogging a little bit and creating my own content, which I still do. But I'm glad that I tested everything out to really network in the community and find a place where I really belong.
Well, what I love about that story is it's the power of networking, people. If you
Mm-hmm.
like, because I really do feel like if you if you want to do things that inspire you and that you love, you need to hang with people and hang in communities where you're surrounded by it. So when you are ready to pivot or when you are looking for something different, you're going to find something that aligns to you because the circle around you aligns to you. And so I think you were perfectly positioned to find that next thing. And luckily, Eliza was like, yes.
Right.
You know,
Exactly. And like, you're right. It's all about networking. And I also think in the last few years, my outlook on networking has changed a little bit because you always hear you have to be networking, you have to be networking. And it sounded like this dirty word to me. Like I was like, networking was just, I don't know how to explain it. It didn't sound positive to me because network always sounded like this thing that I was relating to business and to like what you can get out of these relationships. Like that's how the word was sounding to me. And then I realized networking was really just becoming friends with all of these awesome makers and crafters and podcast hosts. Like it was really just becoming friends with the people that I wanted to become friends with anyway. And that's what networking is in a community that you love. Like it just clicked in the last few years in a way that it hadn't previously. So you're right. It's all about networking and networking, not just thinking about what you can get out of it and not networking with a specific goal in mind of like, I need to meet this person who's going to help me with this. It's just make sure you're networking in a way where you're helping build other people up and they're going to help build you up and put what you want out in the universe. Tell people if you're looking for another job, tell people if you want to create more video content. And when people know what you're looking for, they want to help you.
Yeah, because you're right. I think sometimes the word networking it can be looked at as a dirty word. People are like, oh, but can you be authentic? And it's yes, because even when I think about myself, I have like still friends from, oh my goodness, from high school. Even I have an old elementary school friends, just friends that I've met along the way that I'm really cool with. But they do not give a hoot about punch needles, stained glass, they bullet journaling. I can't have any of those conversations with them because they would literally fall asleep. And so to me, like on my journey, and especially I think Instagram has been great for it. And even the podcast, I've just connected with so many amazing people, like-minded people, but it gives me a chance to like connect and network with people who also enjoy the stuff that I enjoy. And so the only thing that I'm getting out of it is like being able to like share ideas and get inspired. And the byproduct of that sometimes is if people have reached out to me and I've connected them with other people and I know they would do the same for me. That's just like a byproduct of naturally creating this kind of network or community of people that you really gel with, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's how like it's how I look at networking now, and it's how I look at just interacting with people on social media in general too. There always used to be all these like hacky ways to grow your Instagram by commenting on this amount of people's things. And now it's like, screw that. Like just interact with the people who are really inspiring you, and you're just good stuff is going to come from it.
Oh my God, yes. I am so glad you said that. And I've had past guests who've reiterated that before because people get, I feel like, so caught up in the likes and the number of followers. And I always tell people, if you have a community of people that love what you're doing and you can connect with them, be it if you have 500 followers, 2,000, 8,000, it doesn't matter because you can see an account that has like 150,000 people and maybe no one is even interacting with their content, or they're so far removed from their audience at that point because they're so big, where I feel like I have a small Instagram account and I like that because for the most part, I feel like I know the people who are following me. right?
Yeah, like they really are a community. They're not followers when you can
Exactly.
connect them.
So yeah, so it's just like, yes, folks, don't get caught up in all of that. Just do what you love to do. Like just have fun. So,
Exactly. And I think there is a certain degree of define what your goals are. And if you have a specific goal, like I'm right with you. I don't think you should stress over number of followers and all of that. Like it should be more about your engaged audience. But also like be honest with yourself if you have a goal of working with a certain type of brand or something like
mm.
that. Like there might be a requirement of a certain number of followers or something that comes along with that. So if that's
Mm-hmm.
something that you're focusing on too and like that's one of your goals, that's fine. Have that be a goal and like no shame in paying attention to that number too, but don't stress about it in just that way that I think a lot of us were probably guilty of for several years during Instagram's growth of just like get followers, like build that following in a very authentic way rather than trying to hack the algorithm.
Yes, 100% agree. Right, because definitely there's nothing wrong with wanting to grow, but don't get caught up, people. It will take you down trying to have that perfect Instagram account, commenting on everybody's things. Follow. I mean, no. I mean, the strategies I've seen out here, I'm like, who literally has time for this? Like, no, no, and no. Um.
I know.
But okay, so you start this new position right at Jumprope, and before I even asked you my question, people are like, "What is Jumprope?" So I'm like,
Yes,
can you
let's do
tell
that.
the listeners, yes, what is Jumprope?
So, Jumprope is a platform to learn how to do anything. We are the social media platform to share video, but we're also the tool to create it. We make it really easy for anyone to create and share helpful DIYs, art tutorials, even recipes, music lessons, fitness routines, any type of step by step content. And then those step by step guides that you create live on Jumprope's social media platform, but the creators can also download videos to share across all other platforms like Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, YouTube, your own blog, whatever it is. The app automatically formats your video so you can share it everywhere. So it is a huge time saver for creators who want to post video, vertical on TikTok, horizontal on YouTube, all of that. And then it also makes it a lot easier to create video content than if you were going to use something like iMovie or Premiere Pro.
Mm, mm. And so for you, so what's your position? So what are you doing over there?
Yeah, I'm the DIY content director at Jumprope. So
That
I'm
sounds
really
real
the face.
fancy
It
and
doesn't sound
fun.
fancy. Who knew there was a DIY content director position out
Right.
there? I
That's
didn't.
it's like, wait a minute, someone gets paid to do DIY all day? It doesn't seem real.
Right? And I'll be honest because we don't want to spread any of those fake ideas of similar to an entrepreneur where someone's just sitting creating all day. My job is a lot of talking to creators as well as creating. So
Fair.
like I'm basically the face of Jumprope to our DIY bloggers, our artists, our craft creators and makers. I get to educate these creators how to use the app and how they can create really valuable video content. I get to work with them on what valuable video content really means, how it can help you grow, what platforms you can be sharing it on. And then the other cool part of the job is I also communicate all of their feedback back to Jumprope because we are always improving the app based on feedback from our creators. Jumprope has been around for a little over 3 years, so we're still pretty new. So we're making app updates like every week based on feedback from creators. So I get to really learn what artists want in a social media platform and in a video editing tool. And then we get to work to make that happen.
Mm. Now, for and folks out there, I feel like I've beaten you guys over the head about video, video, video and video. If you're not doing video, you need to do video. Um, but what have you seen that works as far as video content? Because since you're communicating with a lot of DIYers and then also telling them how to use the app, and I'm sure you also see which videos get more likes or hits or what have you. What resonates with people? Like what works in video?
Yeah, so the key is this word valuable. And the way that we determine valuable video content at Jumprope is it helpful? Is it detailed? And is it interesting? So like helpful content, for example, you're solving someone's problem, you're answering their questions before they have to ask them. So we focus a lot on tutorials, but really you can create any step-by-step content on Jumprope. So tutorials, roundups, craft supply roundups of things like I've made some that are like 14 supplies you need for hand lettering, things like that. So anything like that is helpful where you're teaching your audience something. That's really valuable content because that's something that people are going to want to share. It's something they're going to want to save and they're going to want to engage with. And that's what you want to get out of your audience when you share video content. And detailed comes down to just that idea of answering their questions before they have to ask them. So if you are creating a tutorial, let them know the supplies they need. Don't make it a secret or something. Give them all of the information. And interesting just means, is it creative and engaging to watch? And does it show your personality and style? So video content can be interesting without you having to be a video pro. Like it doesn't necessarily mean you're filming at different angles and you're using fun transitions, although fun transitions are obviously a thing that's trending so hard with TikTok and Reels. But you can have video content that's interesting without having to have that experience. So it can be in the project that you're sharing. Your personality and style can be, maybe you're comfortable putting your face on camera and you do an intro to your craft videos. Maybe you don't want to put your face on camera, so instead you do a voiceover and you get your personality in that way so your audience can still connect with you. So that's really what we see. If your content is valuable, meaning it's helpful, detailed, and interesting, that's what we see succeed.
Yeah, and I think, at least from what I've seen from Jumprope, it reminds me, even though it's not apples to apples, Skillshare. And I only say that because it breaks things up into chunks. Like what the reason why I like taking courses from Skillshare is like I can learn how to do something in 20 minutes and it's like in like 5 or 6 digestible sections and it feels easy. It doesn't feel long. And it seems like Jumprope is like that for DIY, right? Where it helps in some cases. I know you could kind of cut up the video different ways, but people can do like literally a step-by-step process, so it like chunks the process up and makes it really easy for people to learn how to do whatever it is.
Exactly. So the whole platform is this idea of cards-based content. So it's not like a YouTube video where it's one long form video that you're watching all the way through. It's set up more like Instagram stories where the viewer gets to tap through at their own pace. So that's awesome, number one, for the viewer because they are more in control of their viewing experience. They can pause and stay on a step over and over again until they're ready to move on. They can really easily tap back to a step. So which we all know with crafting, sometimes you got to rewatch stuff. Sometimes you got to be like, wait, did I do that last part right? Because now this next part isn't working out the way I think it should. So you get to back up and go forward as you need to. And that aspect also makes it super easy for the creator because you're not sitting down and editing one long form video like you would in iMovie or something like that. You're editing your Jumprope much more similarly to how you would be creating an Instagram story. So you just have to think about step one, edit your video for step one, add your text instructions for step one, and then swipe and add another card for step two. So it's much simpler just from an editing standpoint than creating a long form video.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because if you guys don't know, I'm like a Pinterest junkie. Like the year Pinterest came out, I was early adopter and I've never stopped. Like Pinterest
Good for
is
you.
I heart Pinterest. So I never have to like look at Pinterest hacks or anything like that because the algorithm already works in my favor because I've been loyal for years. So
Oh, you're so smart.
but it's funny because I haven't gotten, I'm trying to get into their story pins, but I've only done a few, so I'm still experimenting with it. But I can see how the jump rope content can easily be imported into the Pinterest story pins. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you're not doing Pinterest, people know that Pinterest is really nice. Like I have a pin on there of myself that links back to Nache Snow that has like over, I think 50,000 or something. It's like a crazy amount of interaction with it. I can't remember what it is right now, but that pin consistently brings traffic to my website more than Google, right? And Pinterest is funny because you just never know when something will hit, but once it hits, it hits. But for the story pins right now, Pinterest is like really giving those, just like, you know, Instagram is giving anybody who puts out a reel a lot of love for the most part. Pinterest is doing that for stories. And so it sounds like Jump Rope can easily help you create something for a story pin, and then potentially maybe Pinterest will give you some love and that might bring traffic to your website.
Absolutely. We have been having a lot of success with our creators using Jump Rope downloads for Pinterest or for story pins. We actually are a Pinterest partner, so when Story Pins was in very early beta, we were able to play around with it a little bit and were able to give some of our creators access to it. And right away, they were seeing huge impressions on Story Pins, exactly because of what you said, that Pinterest is really pushing Story Pins. Pinterest wants people to spend more time on their platform, not just clicking out to other places. So Story Pins are a way to do that. And I know that some bloggers especially are annoyed with story pins because you can't link out. But if part of your goal is growing this audience on Pinterest, then story pins should 100% be a part of your strategy. And I have to say, I'm so, I don't know, excited that you stuck with Pinterest for so long. I wish that I had that insight. I was early on Pinterest years and years and years ago. And then sort of like I had a blog for a while and I had my Etsy shop for a while. And then when I stopped those things, I just stopped Pinterest from, aside from pinning what I wanted my next haircut to be. Like I stopped using Pinterest and have just started using it again in the last 3 weeks. And it has been so fun to watch it grow. And I am 100% just using jump rope content on it. My entire Pinterest, I think, because Kate All from Simple Pin Media, she came and spoke in our jump rope clubhouse, and then she mentioned she was doing a week-long challenge. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do her Pinterest challenge. At the beginning of it, I hadn't touched my Pinterest in so long. I think I had 2,000 monthly views on there. And then in the last few weeks, I've only used jump rope downloads. I haven't had to create any other content. And I'm over 100,000 monthly views. Yeah. So it's been rewarding to just be able to repurpose content I already had and have it work for me. And so, yes, if you are interested in Pinterest and you also want to start creating video content, use Jump Rope. We have a stories export specifically that you can use for story pins. And then we also have 3 image pins that we create automatically from your content. There's a split screen video pin that looks really awesome. It has your cover image and your title at the bottom and then plays your video at the top. And then there's just a regular video pin that kind of looks exactly how your jump rope would look in the app. And we also have a TikTok download that basically takes all text off of your jump rope and just has the video, and it speeds it up to under a minute. And that has actually been working really well for people on Pinterest, even though it wasn't intended for Pinterest. So I think we have like 9 assets once you create on Jump Rope that you can share to Pinterest, and people are really having fun with them.
No, I got to look into that because Pinterest has been really good to me. I've noticed like the last couple of months, my monthly views have gone down, but I'm wondering if it's because I'm not playing nice and I'm not doing stories.
I
I've
bet
been
it's story
slacking on my
time.
story pins. I've only done like 5, and they're like, "Oh, okay, so you're not going to do our story pins? Okay, we've got you." So I'm like, "Okay, let me get some story pins." So I think I'm gonna work on some this month. We'll see. We'll see.
Yes,
Uh,
and even the thing is too, like even if you just want an easy way to create things like story pins or to create like slideshow type of video content, you can do that in Jumprope too. So like if you just have, I mean, if you have video that you want to repurpose, great. Bring that into Jumprope. You can split it into steps and then use all of those assets. But if you just have photos, whether it's process photos from a tutorial or if it's a roundup of, I just did one that was like 5 nature crafts you can make for Mother's Day. And it was just photos of nature crafts that I had made. You can pull those photos into Jumprope and it will turn it into a little like a slideshow style movie or video rather. It has your text instructions in there so it can still be really helpful and detailed, and then you still get all those Pinterest assets.
no, nice. And as we wrap up here, so what's
Mhm.
like your video setup?
I used to only film in natural light just because that's what I had, and it honestly worked for months and months. But
Mm.
my current video setup is I just have an 18-inch ring light, and I have a little like a gooseneck phone holder. I don't actually have a tripod. I use this gooseneck thing because it clamps onto my ring light and then it holds my phone. I film everything on my phone. You
Mm.
don't have to have a DSLR or fancy video equipment. You do not need it. So my
Mm-hmm.
phone, a gooseneck phone clamp holder, and my ring light. And the secret to the colorful backgrounds in my video content are just oversized Canson drawing papers. You can get them on Amazon, you can get them at Blick, you can get them at art supply stores. They're great, just like colorful backgrounds for your craft videos.
Mm. There you have it, people. And of course, I'll link to her Instagram account so you can see it in action, and they look really good. So, just a couple of wrap up questions. The first question is, how do you stay organized? I mean, you with Jumprope, you got, Craft Hangout episodes, then you do like your own thing on the side with crafting. How do you stay sane?
I don't like a lot of different organization tools and apps. I'm like a find the thing that works and just use it for everything type of gal. So I don't, first of all, Google Calendar everything. Like I just got to the point where now I put people's birthdays are on Google Calendar. My podcast stuff is on Google Calendar. Work stuff is on there. If I have to do something with my husband, it's on there. Just everything. Just put it on your calendar so it's out of your brain. And I honestly just use Google Docs and sometimes Google Sheets to keep my content organized. I use Google Sheets a ton for Jumprope work, but for organizing my own content, I usually just have a running Google Doc for each month. I have one for my own content and I have one for Craft Hangout. I put just a table at the top that's like a calendar grid so I know when I want to share stuff. And then I use that doc to just write all of my descriptions, note hashtags I want to use. If I have a running bulleted list of new ideas for later in the month or for the next month. So I just keep everything in one running Google Doc.
Mm. Now this is gonna be a hard one because you dabble in a little bit of everything. But if you had to choose a top hobby, what would that be?
Do you have a hard time with this too? Because I know you're a crafter that does everything, and when crafting is like kind of related to what you do, it suddenly becomes it's a hobby and it's work, and you start a new one. Like I know you have just started stained glass, right? Which I'm
right. So that's kind of like it's like at the I'm still doing all the other things, but that's at least at the top because it's like something new and fun, right? But yeah.
Right. That's the thing. I always find a new craft and I'm like, okay, this one is just going to be my hobby. I'm not going to try and teach it or post about it. And then that never happens.
I know, right?
So I think my last one was needle felting. I was like, well, I'm never going to create a tutorial about needle felting. And the last tutorial that I posted was how to mend your sweaters by needle felting. So
we can't help ourselves. You know what I think it is? I feel like it is the need, and maybe let me know if you're different, but I think I love oversharing, and I love business, and I love crafting. And anytime I can do all three, I'm going to do all three because all three make me happy.
Yes, exactly. And I will say, like, because crafting doesn't feel like a hobby to me because it's become so much more, just if people ask me what my hobby is outside of crafting, I just say plants, and that's fine. I do love plants. I don't know. I couldn't spend hours tending my plants the way I do crafting, but if I need something that like I know is not going to become work and I just need to like get back to nature a little bit, I just buy some new plants and put them in fun pots.
No, I 100% agree with you. I love my plants, but I mean, I take care of them, but some are a little sad right now. But I know one thing, I will never, ever monetize my plant life. I have
Exactly.
I don't want to teach how to maintain plants. I don't want a plant Instagram account. Like, it's just never going to happen. So,
Exactly.
No, I get
That's
it.
what like planting or repotting plants and trimming plants and propagating plants is what brings me peace at like I'm up early in the morning. I've had my coffee. I don't want to jump into work yet, so I'm gonna propagate some plants. That's sort of my like finding peace hobby.
I like it. I'm with you there. I'm with you. And then, yeah, just please tell the listeners where they can find you and find out more about you.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram, Jumprope, and TikTok at Jessie Katz Greenberg. And we talked about Craft Hangout and Jumprope too, so I want to make sure that you can find those things. Craft Hangout, you can listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and you can find us on Instagram at Craft Hangout. And Jumprope, you can download in the App Store or Google Play Store. Visit us at jumprope.com or follow on Instagram at Let's Jumprope.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Jessie. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to just chat with you today. I've had so much fun.
Well, my friends, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Really have fun talking to Jessie. Jessie, thanks again for coming on. I think you're just so amazing. I've loved following you and seeing all that you do. I listen to the Craft Hangout podcast, and I am going to check out this Jumprope. I've been saying I'm going to check it out, but I really do need to check it out and step up my Pinterest game. Okay, so anywho, you guys know the drill. If you love this episode, please rate it 5 stars. Subscribe everywhere. If you want to support the podcast, remember to go over to nachesnow.com and just click that shop button. I see lately a lot of people have been buying the digital version of the Life Cleanse journal. So I would love to hear feedback from you. Have you taken it into good notes and filled it out? And what have you been able to accomplish after you have answered all the prompts in the journal? I just would love to hear your story and maybe even share it. If you haven't already, check it out. It's really useful to just take the time to answer questions about yourself just to find out what you should do next. But you can't do that until you really know where you are and what you want. But anywho, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And of course, Nache will be back next week with me. And we have a really fun episode. I'm not going to even give you all a teaser. You have to tune in. So subscribe. All right. Have a good week, people. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.